The first thing I remember is the crack. It wasn't just a noise. It was a feeling deep in my bone, like a tree branch snapping under too much weight. 1 second I was standing by the kitchen counter, reaching for a mug. The next I was on the floor, my leg twisted at an angle that wasn't natural, screaming. My wife, Sarah, was standing over me, a surprised look on her face, the heavy cast iron pan she'd been holding lying on the floor beside my knee. "Oh my God, Alex, are you okay?" she cried, dropping to her knees beside me. Her voice sounded panicked, her hands fluttering near my face, but not quite touching me. "I am so sorry. I just turned around and you were there. I didn't see you. The pan just slipped." The pain was blinding. It was like a million tiny knives stabbing into my shin, burning and throbbing all at once. I tried to answer, but only a strangled gasp came out. My vision blurred around the edges. I could feel sweat breaking out of my forehead, cold and clammy. Sarah kept repeating how sorry she was, her voice rising in pitch. She looked genuinely terrified, her eyes wide with what seemed like shock and remorse. She helped me get my phone, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. "My husband, he's fallen. I accidentally hit his leg with a pan," she stammered into the phone, her voice shaking. "I think it's broken. He's in so much pain." The paramedics arrived quickly, their sirens wailing faintly as they pulled up to our quiet suburban house. Our neighbors peeked out their windows, curious but not intrusive. Sarah was a flurry of activity, pointing them towards me, explaining what happened over and over. "It was an accident," she kept saying, almost as if she was trying to convince herself as much as them. They cut my jeans away, revealing my leg, which was already swelling to an alarming size, a nasty bruise blooming on my shin. One of the paramedics gently touched it, and I screamed again. "Definitely looks like a fracture," he said grimly. "We need to get him to the hospital." The ride in the ambulance was a blur of flashing lights and throbbing pain. Sarah rode with me, holding my hand tightly. Her grip was strong, reassuring. She kept murmuring apologies, stroking my hair. "It's going to be okay, honey," she whispered. "We'll get through this." Despite the pain and the shock, I felt a strange sense of comfort from her presence. She was my wife, my partner. And even though she was the one who had accidentally caused this, she was also the one I leaned on. At the hospital, it was a whirlwind of doctors, nurses, and questions. X-rays confirmed it. A comminuted fracture of the tibia and fibula, meaning both bones were broken in multiple places. It was a serious break. The doctor, a kind-faced man with tired eyes, explained that I would need surgery to insert rods and plates to stabilize the bones. Recovery would be long, maybe 6 months to a year before I could put full weight on it again. My life as I knew it was on pause. My job, my hobbies, everything. It was a lot to take in. Sarah was there the whole time, nodding solemnly, asking all the right questions. She held my hand when the doctor explained the surgery, squeezed it tight when they gave me pain medication. She was the picture of a worried, loving wife. "I can't believe I did this," she whispered later that night, after I was settled in my hospital room, the initial pain dulled by meds, but a dull ache still present. She was sitting in the visitor's chair, looking pale and exhausted. "I feel so terrible, Alex. I just wasn't looking." "It's okay, Sarah." I managed, my voice raspy. "It was an accident. I know it was. We'll get through this, right?" She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Of course we will. I'll take care of everything. You just focus on getting better." She even offered to stay the night, but I told her to go home and get some rest. She reluctantly agreed, kissing my forehead before she left. Lying in that hospital bed alone with my thoughts, the pain medication started to make me feel a little fuzzy. But even through the haze, a tiny annoying thought began to niggle at the back of my mind, a tiny detail that didn't quite fit. Sarah had said the pan slipped, but I remembered the way she was holding it. She'd been holding it by the handle, like you would if you were about to put it on the stove. And when it hit my leg, it wasn't a glancing blow. It felt like a direct, heavy impact. Like it had been swung. No, that was crazy. She wouldn't do that. It was an accident. It had to be. My wife, my Sarah, she loved me. This was just the pain talking, making me paranoid. I closed my eyes, trying to push the unsettling thoughts away, and drifted off to a restless sleep. The next morning before my surgery, those thoughts were still there, like a stubborn fly buzzing around my head. I tried to remember the exact sequence of events. I was reaching for the mug on the top shelf, my back mostly to the counter. Sarah was supposedly turning around. But why was she holding a heavy cast iron pan while turning around? Especially if she was just trying to put it away or something. It seemed awkward. And the force of the impact. It was significant. I felt a cold dread creep into my stomach. I shook my head slightly on the pillow. Stop it, Alex. You are just traumatized. It was an accident. She said so. She looked so sorry. She was so worried. My own brain was betraying me, trying to create a narrative out of thin air. It had to be the shock. It had to be the pain. I tried to focus on the coming surgery, on the long road to recovery, on anything but that nagging, disturbing detail. I tried to believe her, to believe in her, with all my heart. But the seed of doubt once planted was already beginning to sprout. The surgery itself was a blur. I woke up feeling groggy, my leg heavily bandaged and elevated. There was a dull, constant ache now, different from the sharp, stabbing pain before. Sarah was there, sitting beside my bed, reading a magazine. When she saw my eyes open, she put the magazine down immediately. "Hey, sleepyhead," she said softly, a smile on her face. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I mumbled, trying to crack a joke, but it came out flat. She chuckled, a light, airy sound. "Well, you kind of did. But the doctor said it went well. They put in plates and screws. You are going to be okay." She squeezed my hand, a gesture of comfort that should have made me feel entirely safe and loved. But the image of the pan, the way it hit, it flickered in my mind like a malfunctioning neon sign. No, I thought again. It was an accident. It was. It had to be. The next few days in the hospital were a mix of pain management and learning how to navigate life with a broken leg. The nurses were helpful, showing me how to use crutches, how to get in and out of bed. Sarah visited every day, bringing me food, fresh clothes, and stories from outside the sterile hospital walls. She was attentive, patient, never complaining about the extra work. She even talked about how she'd set up a little station for me at home, downstairs, so I wouldn't have to struggle with the stairs. She was being incredibly supportive. Any doubts I had started to fade under the weight of her kindness. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was just the trauma of the accident messing with my head. I was lucky to have such a caring wife. That's what I told myself, trying to squash that persistent tiny voice of suspicion. When it was finally time to go home, Sarah was there with a car, ready to help me every step of the way. She'd even put an extra pillow in the passenger seat for my leg. She helped me into the house, eased me onto the couch, and brought me a glass of water. Our house felt different now, imbued with the memory of that terrible moment in the kitchen. But Sarah's presence, her constant care, made it feel like a safe haven again, almost. I was settled on the couch, my leg propped up on pillows, when my eyes drifted to the corner of the kitchen. That's where it was. Our security camera. We'd installed it a few months ago, mostly for peace of mind when we were away. Covered the entire kitchen and living room, a wide-angle lens capturing everything. It recorded continuously, saving footage to the cloud. I hadn't even thought about it until now. The thought came, Unbidden, a sudden jolt. The camera, it saw everything. I dismissed it quickly. Why would I need to see it? It was an accident, I trusted her. But the idea, once it appeared, just wouldn't leave. It lingered, a tiny splinter under my skin itching. I tried to focus on something else, the television, a book. But my gaze kept drifting back to that little black lens in the corner. It held the truth. The whole truth, and suddenly I desperately needed to know what it saw. Not because I thought she did it on purpose, but because I needed to put that nagging doubt to rest. I needed to see it for myself, to confirm that it was indeed just a terrible, unfortunate accident. Only then could I truly move on, and only then could I truly trust my own mind again. The pain meds were making me sleepy, and soon I drifted off. But even in my dreams, the image of that camera lens floated, a silent, unblinking eye watching. The next few days at home were tough. My leg throbbed constantly, a dull ache that medication could only temper, not eliminate. I was practically useless, relying on Sarah for everything. She brought me meals, helped me to the bathroom, even gave me sponge baths. She never complained, always with a kind word and a gentle touch. On the surface, she was the perfect caregiver. She read to me, watched movies with me, and kept the house spotless. Any remaining doubts I had started to recede, buried under the mountain of her attentive care. But as the initial shock wore off and the fog of heavy painkillers lifted, my mind started to clear. And with that clarity came a re-evaluation of things. Sarah was almost too perfect. Her concerns sometimes felt performative, her apologies too rehearsed. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible. She would often ask me if I remembered anything else about the accident, or if I was sure I didn't blame her. Her questions were always framed with concern, but they had a strange undertone, like she was fishing for something. It made me uncomfortable. One afternoon, while Sarah was out getting groceries, I found myself alone, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the house was heavy. My eyes drifted again to the security camera, perched innocently in the corner of the living room, overlooking the kitchen entrance. It was like a magnet, pulling my gaze. I had to know, I had to see it. Not out of accusation, but out of a desperate need for peace of mind. I needed to prove to myself that my paranoia was unfounded, that my wife truly was the loving, accidental culprit she claimed to be. Getting to my computer was a monumental task. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through my leg. I pushed myself up, gritting my teeth, and slowly, painstakingly, made my way to my home office using my crutches. It took forever, my arms aching, sweat dripping down my back. Finally, I reached my desk. I pulled up our home security app on my laptop. My heart was pounding, a nervous drum against my ribs. The app was easy to navigate. I found the section for recorded events. I scrolled back to the date of the accident. There it was, listed under motion detected. The timestamp was exactly when it happened. I clicked on it. The first few seconds showed me standing by the counter, reaching for the mug, my back to the camera. Then Sarah entered the frame from the side, walking towards me. She was holding the cast iron pan. It was undeniably heavy, a black solid mass in her hand. My breath caught in my throat. She didn't slip. She didn't stumble. She walked directly behind me. Her arm came up. The pan wasn't swinging freely, it was being raised. Her grip on the handle was firm. She looked directly at my leg for a split second, a focused, almost grim expression on her face. Then, with a deliberate, powerful motion, she swung the pan down. It was a clear, concise movement aimed squarely at my shin. The crack, the one I remembered, wasn't just a sound. It was the visual confirmation of metal striking bone. I watched it again and again. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was undeniably intentional. There was no accidental slip, no panic turn. It was a calculated, brutal strike. The video showed her immediately dropping the pan. After the impact, her body language shifting instantly from attacker to concerned wife. Her hands went to her mouth, her eyes widened. The shock, the panic, the tears she'd shown me in the immediate aftermath, it was all an act. A performance, and a damn good one. I felt a coldness spread through me, chilling me to the bone. It wasn't just my leg that was broken. My entire world, my trust, my perception of reality. It was all shattered into a million pieces. The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, had deliberately attacked me. She had broken my leg. On purpose. The screen blurred as tears finally welled in my eyes. Not tears of pain from my leg, but tears of pure, agonizing betrayal. How could she? Why would she? Questions screamed in my head, a desperate, silent plea for understanding. This wasn't an accident. This was an assault. And it was carried out by my wife. I closed the laptop lid, the black screen reflecting my shattered face. The silence in the house was no longer heavy. It was deafening, filled with the echo of that sickening crack. My stomach churned. I felt nauseous. Not from the pain in my leg, but from the realization that the person I shared my life with was a complete stranger. A monster, hiding behind a facade of love and care. Every kind word, every gentle touch, every act of support she had shown me since the accident now felt like a lie, a sickening mockery. She wasn't taking care of me, she was taking care of her alibi. The worst part was, I had invited her into my life. I had trusted her implicitly. I had seen her as my safe harbor. And she had shattered that illusion with a cast iron pan. My hands trembled as I finally pushed myself away from the desk. I needed to get back to the couch before she returned. I needed time to process this, to figure out what to do. The thought of her walking back into the house, smiling, pretending, made my skin crawl. I needed to pretend too for now, but inside I was already making a plan. A plan for what? I didn't know yet. But it wouldn't involve her. Not anymore. My life with her was over. It had ended the moment that pan connected with my leg. I managed to drag myself back to the couch, my heart still hammering against my ribs. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the images from the video replaying endlessly in my mind. Her face, so calm, so deliberate, the force of the swing, the sickening thud. It was all so clear now. Every single interaction since the accident suddenly made sense, but in the most twisted, horrifying way. Her constant apologies were not out of guilt for an accident, but out of fear of discovery. Her attentiveness was not love, but a desperate attempt to maintain her charade. When Sarah finally returned from the grocery store, the familiar jingle of her keys in the lock sounded ominous. I quickly closed my eyes, feigning sleep. I heard her footsteps, the rustle of grocery bags. She came into the living room, paused, and then I felt a gentle hand on my forehead. "Still sleeping, honey," she whispered, her voice soft, seemingly affectionate. I kept my eyes closed, trying to control my breathing, to not give anything away. Touch of her hand, which just hours ago I would have welcomed, now felt like poison. My skin crawled. I wanted to recoil, to scream, to push her away, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to be calm. I needed a plan. I felt her pull away, heard her move into the kitchen, putting away groceries. The sounds of everyday life felt utterly surreal. How could she just go about her day knowing what she had done? Knowing that she had deliberately, violently harmed me, and knowing that I didn't know, except now I did. The knowledge was a crushing weight in my chest. Later that evening, she made me dinner, bringing a tray to the couch. She sat beside me, asking about my day, her voice light and cheerful. I forced myself to respond normally, to smile, to pretend that everything was fine. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Every bite of food felt like ash in my mouth. Every word she spoke felt like a lie. I watched her, trying to find any flicker of the monster I saw in the video, but she was perfectly composed, perfectly charming. It was terrifying. "You are a little quiet tonight," she observed. Her brow furrowed slightly. "Is your leg bothering you more?" "Just tired," I mumbled, trying to sound convincing. "And it aches?" "Yeah." "Just feels heavy," she nodded sympathetically. "I understand. This is a lot for you. Just try to rest. I am here for you always. Always," I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. The irony was a cruel joke. She was here for me, yes, but only after putting me in this position. I spent the rest of the night plotting, my mind racing a million miles an hour. I needed to get the video off the cloud, downloaded onto a separate device. I needed to make copies. I needed to secure proof before she realized I knew. Then I needed to figure out my next steps. Confrontation was out of the question, not while I was stuck on the couch. Vulnerable, I needed help. But who could I trust? Who would even believe me? It sounded insane. My wife, breaking my leg, on purpose. The hardest part was going to sleep in the same bed as her. I feigned sleep for hours, listening to her quiet breathing beside me. Every rustle she made, every slight shift sent a jolt of panic through me. Was she awake? Was she watching me? What else was she capable of? Image of her raising that pan, her face set with grim determination, was burned into my mind. I barely slept, my body exhausted, but my mind in overdrive. The next morning, as soon as Sarah left for her morning run, I was back on my computer. My legs screamed in protest, but I ignored. I accessed the security app again, found the video, and downloaded it. I then uploaded it to a secure, encrypted cloud storage, and emailed it to myself, and to a trusted friend who I knew would be awake and online, just in case. I felt a small, almost imperceptible sense of relief once the files were transferred. The proof was safe. Now I needed to figure out what to do with it. The plan started to form in my mind, slowly, painstakingly. I couldn't just accuse her. I needed to be smart, careful. I was still vulnerable, still recovering. I needed professional help, a lawyer, and maybe even the police. But the thought of involving the police, of having to explain this insane situation, made my stomach churn. Who would believe me without rock-solid evidence? Luckily, I had that. I thought about our life together, the 5 years of marriage, the decade we'd been together before that. Were there signs I missed? Little things that in hindsight pointed to something being off? I started replaying memories. Her occasional mood swings, sometimes disproportionate reactions to small annoyances. Her secrecy about her phone, always keeping it locked and out of my sight. Her sudden, uncharacteristic interest in my life insurance policy about 6 months ago. At the time, I dismissed it as her being practical. Now, it felt sinister. It felt like planning. The more I thought about it, the more small, unsettling details started to emerge from the back of my mind. There was that time a few months ago when she got really angry about something trivial, like me forgetting to take out the trash. Her eyes had gone cold, and she had smashed a plate on the floor. At the time, I'd been shocked, but she'd immediately apologized, blaming stress. Now it felt like a warning, a glimpse of something darker. Then there was the money. We had always been financially transparent, or so I thought. But lately, she had been handling more of the bills, saying she wanted to lighten my load. I had just finished paying off my student loans, and my salary had recently increased significantly. We were supposed to be building up our savings, but she always had an explanation for why the bank balance wasn't growing as fast as I expected. Unexpected bills, car repairs, gifts for family. I had never questioned her too deeply. I trusted her. That trust was now a gaping wound. I started to connect the dots, and it painted a chilling picture. The life insurance questions, my increased salary, her taking over the finances, the unexplained lack of savings, the plate smashing. And now the broken leg. Was this about money? Was she trying to collect insurance? Or was it something else? Something even more malicious? The thought made me sick to my stomach. My wife a cold, calculating criminal. It was too much to bear. I knew I couldn't confront her directly. Not yet. I was still in her care, dependent on her. What if she found out I knew and tried to hurt me again? Or worse, I needed to get out. I needed a safe place, but with a broken leg I was trapped. I had to play along to keep up the facade of the trusting injured husband until I could make my move. The thought was nauseating, but necessary. I thought about my family. My sister Clara lived a few states away, but we were close. She was pragmatic, smart, and fiercely loyal. She would believe me. I decided she would be the first person I confided in. I couldn't just call her and blurt out, "My wife broke my leg on purpose." I needed to be careful, to explain it in a way that wouldn't make her think I was having a breakdown. I needed to show her the video. I waited until Sarah went out for another errand. She seemed to have a lot of those these days, conveniently giving me alone time. I called Clara. My voice was shaky, and I could tell she immediately picked up on it. "Alex, are you okay? You sound awful," she said, concern clear in her voice. "Clara, I need to tell you something serious. But I can't talk about it over the phone," I whispered, my eyes darting towards the door, even though I knew Sarah was gone. "I need to show you something. Can you come visit, please? As soon as you can? It's really urgent." There was a pause on the other end. "Urgent? What's going on, Alex? Is it your leg? Are you not healing well?" "It's not that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about the accident. About Sarah." That got her attention. She knew how much I loved Sarah. Any insinuation about her would immediately raise flags. "What about Sarah, Alex?" she asked, her voice hardening slightly. "Can't say it over the phone. I have proof I need to show you. Please, Clara, trust me on this. It's life or death almost." That might have been an exaggeration, but it felt true in the moment. My life with Sarah was certainly dead. Clara was quiet for a moment, processing my intensity. "Okay," she finally said, her voice calmer but still serious. "Okay, Alex. I'll figure something out. I'll take the first flight I can. Maybe tomorrow, if I'm lucky. I'll text you my flight details. Just stay safe, okay?" "I will," I promised, feeling a sliver of hope ignite within me. Help was coming. I just had to hold on. The thought of Clara arriving, of finally having someone to share this horrific secret with, was the only thing keeping me sane. But until then, I was still alone, trapped in a house with a woman who had tried to hurt me. The charade had to continue. When Sarah came back, she noticed I was on the phone. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yeah, just Clara," I said casually, forcing a smile. "She was just checking in on me. Wants to visit soon." Sarah's face tightened for a brief moment, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, before it smoothed back into her usual caring expression. "Oh, That's nice. When is she thinking of coming? She asked a little too quickly. She's checking flights. Probably in a day or two, I replied, watching her carefully. Her reaction was subtle, but it was there. A hesitation. A slight discomfort. It confirmed my suspicion. She didn't want me talking to my family. This was good. This meant she probably had something to hide, and I was about to expose it. The next 24 hours felt like an eternity. Every time Sarah walked past me, every time she touched me, I had to suppress a shiver of revulsion. I kept picturing the video, her cold, calculating eyes. How could I have been so blind? How could I have lived with this person, shared my life with her, and not seen the darkness lurking beneath the surface? The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Clara called me the next morning. Alex, I got a flight. I'll be there by evening, she said, her voice full of purpose. Don't tell Sarah I am coming today. Just tell her I'll be there soon or something. I want to surprise her. I understood immediately. She wanted to observe Sarah's reaction, and she wanted to be there when Sarah wasn't expecting it, giving her a chance to see the real Sarah. Got it, I replied, my voice filled with relief. Thank you, Clara. Thank you so much. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I felt a surge of nervous energy. This was it, the beginning of the end. I had to choose my moment carefully. After Sarah left for one of her errands, which I now suspected were anything but innocent, I quickly grabbed my laptop, the one with the downloaded video. I knew I couldn't keep it hidden for long once Clara arrived. Clara arrived just as dusk was settling, pulling up in a rental car. She walked in, her usual confident stride, then stopped dead. When she saw me on the couch, my leg elevated. Oh my God, Alex, she said, her voice softening with genuine concern. She came over and hugged me carefully. You really are messed up. How are you doing, really? Physically, I am okay, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. Mentally, not so much. I need to show you something, Clara. It's really important. Can you come to my office? She looked at me, sensing the urgency and the grimness in my tone. Of course, she said, helping me slowly navigate the short distance to my office. Once inside, with the door closed, I took a deep breath. Okay, I said, opening the laptop. What I am about to show you is going to be a shock. You might not believe it at first, but I need you to trust me. This is the security camera footage from the kitchen, from the day I broke my leg. Clara sat down, her expression serious. Okay, she said, her eyes fixed on the screen. I clicked play. The video started, the mundane scene of me reaching for a mug, then Sarah entering the frame, the pan in her hand. Clara watched, her brow furrowing slightly. As Sarah raised the pan, Clara's eyes widened. Her breath hitched when Sarah deliberately swung it, hitting my leg with a sickening thud. The immediate aftermath, Sarah's theatrical display of shock and concern, played out silently on the screen. When the video ended, Clara just stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. She didn't say anything, didn't move. Clara, I prompted gently, my voice cracking slightly. She slowly turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of horror, disbelief, and a cold fury I rarely saw from her. Alex, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She did that on purpose. That wasn't an accident. She hit you, deliberately. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Yes, I know. I just found out a few days ago. I was too out of it after the accident to even think about the camera. But then I started noticing things, little things that didn't add up. Clara stood up and started pacing the small office, running a hand through her hair. This is insane. This is attempted assault. What the hell, Alex? Why would she do this? I don't know, I admitted, the desperation clear in my voice. But I have some theories, financial stuff, insurance. Things she's been doing lately that suddenly make sense now. I've been doing some digging. Subtle digging from here. I explained about the life insurance questions, the missing money, her secrecy. Clara stopped pacing and looked at me, her expression grim. Okay, we need to be smart about this. You can't stay here, Alex. Not with her. She's dangerous. We need to get you out. I know, I said, my voice filled with relief that she believed me, that she saw it too. But how? I can barely move, and I don't want her to know I know. Not yet. She's being my full-time caregiver. I am completely dependent on her. Clara thought for a moment, her eyes narrowed in concentration. We need a plan. First, we secure the evidence. You've already got it downloaded. Good. Next, we call a lawyer. A good one. Someone who specializes in domestic violence or at least criminal intent in civil cases. And then we get you to a safe place. My place, or a temporary apartment. We'll tell her you need specialized care, or that I am taking you to a rehabilitation center in my state. Something she won't suspect. It's risky, I said, picturing Sarah's reaction. Everything is risky now, Alex, Clara replied, her voice firm. Staying here is riskier. We need to act now, before she gets suspicious. Does she know you have the video? No, I said. I deleted it from the app once I downloaded it, cleared the cache, everything. She shouldn't have any idea. Good, Clara said, nodding decisively. First thing tomorrow we find a lawyer. I'll make some calls tonight. For now, you just keep up the act. Don't let her see anything, and don't tell her I've seen the video. We have to keep our cards close to our chest. This is serious, Alex. She tried to seriously harm you. Her words sent a fresh wave of fear through me. She wasn't wrong. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crime. The next morning, Clara began making phone calls from a spare room, her voice low. I feigned sleep on the couch, listening intently. She was concise, professional, explaining the situation in general terms at first, then offering to send the video. I felt a surge of hope. This was really happening. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was pursuing justice. Around lunchtime, Clara came back to the living room, her face grim but determined. Okay, Alex, I found someone. Her name is Miss Evelyn Reed. She's a sharp lawyer, excellent reputation for these kinds of cases. She wants to see us this afternoon. She's booked us for 3 p.m. This afternoon? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. How would we explain my absence to Sarah? Yes, no time to waste. I told her the urgency. Sarah's out, right? Clara asked. She went to her yoga class. Should be back in a couple of hours, I replied. That gives us maybe an hour to get there. An hour for the meeting, and an hour to get back. It'll be tight. We'll make it work, Clara said, already helping me slowly get ready. She packed a small bag with the essential documents I had gathered about our finances, and the video files on a secure drive. The drive to the lawyer's office was tense. Every bump in the road sent a jolt through my leg. My mind raced, trying to anticipate Sarah's reaction, trying to imagine how this would all play out. The reality of what I was doing, of essentially dismantling my entire life, was overwhelming. Miss Reed was exactly as Clara described. Sharp, no nonsense. She listened patiently as I recounted the story, Clara interjecting with details when needed. When I got to the part about the security camera, she leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "And you have the footage?" she asked, her voice calm. "Yes," I said, handing her the secure drive. She inserted it into her computer, and the chilling scene played out again on her screen. As the video finished, Miss Reed simply nodded slowly. "This is very strong evidence, Mr. Thompson. Very strong. This clearly shows intent. This is not an accident. This is assault. Given the severity of your injuries, this could even be charged as aggravated assault or attempted murder, depending on the state's statutes and the prosecutor's discretion. My blood ran cold. Attempted murder. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Sarah, my wife, a criminal. What are options? Clara asked, her voice steady. Well, first and foremost, Mr. Thompson, we need to ensure your safety, Miss Reed stated, looking directly at me. You cannot return to that house. It is not safe. We need to obtain a temporary restraining order immediately. We will file for divorce, citing cruelty and battery using this video as evidence. We will also contact the police. With this video, they will almost certainly open an investigation and press charges. The police? I repeated, my voice weak. She'll go to jail? Miss Reed's expression softened slightly. That will be up to the prosecutor and the courts, Mr. Thompson. But yes, that is a very strong possibility. This is a serious crime. The idea of Sarah in jail facing criminal charges was a lot to process. Despite everything, she was still the woman I had loved, the woman I had married. But then I remembered the cold, calculated look in her eyes as she swung that pan. That woman was a stranger. We also need to consider your financial situation, Miss Reed continued. You mentioned suspicions about her handling of your finances. We can request a full forensic audit of all joint accounts and any accounts in her name. If she has been siphoning off funds, we will uncover it. We spent another hour discussing the legal process, the steps we would take, the timeline. It was overwhelming, but having a clear plan and having Miss Reed on my side made me feel less helpless. So, what's the immediate next step? Clara asked. We are going to get you out of there immediately, Miss Reed said. I'll draft the restraining order request. We'll go to the courthouse to file it. In the meantime, Clara, can you take your brother somewhere safe? Perhaps your hotel room or a friend's place. Do not let her know where you are going, and do not, under any circumstances, communicate with her once you leave the house. My hotel room is fine, Clara confirmed. I can go there directly from here. We'll just leave Sarah a note. Maybe say you are going to a rehab facility with me for some intensive therapy or something. That gives us a window. The thought of leaving everything behind, of never stepping foot in my own home again, was strangely liberating. Yes, it was painful, but it was also a decisive break from the nightmare I had been living. We left Miss Reed's office with a stack of papers and a new sense of purpose. The plan was clear. Clara would drop me at her hotel, then go back to the house to retrieve a few essentials for me under the guise of packing for the rehab facility. We would leave a note, vague enough to buy us time. As we drove away, I felt a pang of something akin to grief. My marriage was over. My home was no longer safe. My life was irrevocably changed. But beneath that grief was a growing sense of relief, a fragile hope for a future free from fear and betrayal. We executed the plan with military precision. Clara dropped me at her hotel room, settled me in, and then went back to the house. I waited, my phone clutched in my hand, my heart pounding. Text came from Clara a short while later. Got your essentials. Leaving the note now. Heading out. A huge sigh of relief escaped me. She was safe. I was safe. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I pictured Sarah coming home, reading that note, the realization slowly dawning on her that I was gone, that I knew. The thought filled me with a perverse sense of satisfaction. She had tried to destroy me, but I had survived. and now it was her turn to face the consequences. This was just the beginning. That evening, the first call came. It was Sarah. I looked at the phone, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Miss Reed had explicitly told me not to answer, to have no contact. Part of me, a morbid, curious part, wanted to hear what she would say. I let it ring, and ring again, and again. Eventually, she left a voicemail. Her voice was frantic, laced with a panic I had never heard before. "Alex, where are you? Clara just left a note saying you are going to some rehab center. What is going on? Why didn't you tell me? Call me back, please. I am so worried. This isn't like you, Alex. Please." Her voice broke, ending in a choked sob. It was a masterful performance. The worried wife, the concerned caregiver. If I hadn't seen the video, I would have believed her completely. But now, it just sounded hollow, a desperate attempt to regain control. I felt nothing but a cold certainty. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about herself. She knew the game was up. Or at least, she was starting to suspect it. Clara came back to the hotel a couple of hours later, carrying a duffel bag with some of my clothes and essentials. "Did she call?" she asked, seeing the missed calls on my phone. "She left a voicemail," I said, replaying it for her. Clara listened, her face impassive. "Good acting," she commented when it finished. "She's worried you are going to expose her. She knows her gravy train is gone." "What now?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "Now we let Miss Reed do her job," Clara said, pulling out her laptop. "She's already filed the temporary restraining order. The police should be notified soon. Tomorrow morning, we'll follow up on the financial audit, and then we wait. We let the legal process take its course." The next few days were a blur of phone calls with Miss Reed, meetings with financial experts, and the excruciating pain of my healing leg. Police contacted me, and I recounted the entire story, showing them the video. Their initial skepticism quickly turned to grim seriousness. They opened a full investigation. I learned that Sarah had indeed been systematically draining our joint accounts, transferring large sums of money into an unknown account. The life insurance policy I had was indeed much larger than I remembered, and she had recently updated it to be the sole beneficiary. It was all so calculated, so cold. My wife hadn't just broken my leg, she had planned to ruin my life, financially and physically. The biggest shock came a week later. Miss Reed called me with an update. "Mr. Thompson, the police have located the separate account your wife was using. It contained a significant sum of money, almost all of your savings. And they also found something else." Miss Reed paused, and I braced myself. "It appears your wife has been having an affair. The money was being transferred to an account she shared with this other individual. They were planning to disappear together." My stomach dropped. An affair, the money. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just about insurance. This was about escaping, about starting a new life with someone else, using my money, and getting rid of me in the process. The leg break wasn't just an act of violence. It was an attempt to incapacitate me, to make me less of a threat, or perhaps even a final desperate act before disappearing. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The police are still investigating, but it appears to be a man she met through a shared hobby," Miss Reed said. "They believe he might have been involved in the planning, or at least aware of her intentions. The betrayal deepened, if that was even possible. It wasn't just Sarah, it was Sarah and someone else. Two people conspiring against me, plotting my demise. The anger that surged through me was hot and consuming. Sarah was arrested a few days later. Clara showed me the news report on her phone. There was a grainy picture of Sarah, her face looking tired and drawn, being led away in handcuffs. There was no sign of the confident, loving wife I thought I knew. There was only a woman caught in a lie. The news reported her being charged with aggravated assault, theft, and conspiracy. The outpouring of support from my friends and family was overwhelming. They were shocked, horrified, and incredibly sympathetic. They couldn't believe the woman they knew. The charming, friendly Sarah could be capable of such a... I told them the bare minimum, that it was not an accident, that there was proof, and that the police were involved. It was still hard to talk about without feeling a deep sense of shame and humiliation. How could I have been so blind? The recovery from my leg was still ongoing, but it felt less painful now that the emotional weight had been lifted. The cast was heavy, but the burden in my mind was lighter. I was still in Clara's hotel room, slowly regaining my strength. I had started physical therapy. The exercises grueling but necessary. Each small step I took, each increase in mobility felt like a victory, not just for my leg but for my spirit. The divorce proceedings began. They were messy as expected. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue it was a misunderstanding, a lapse in judgment. But the video evidence was undeniable. The financial records confirmed the theft. Her attempts to portray herself as a victim, as a woman under duress, fell flat. The judge, presented with the overwhelming evidence, granted the restraining order and began the process of severing all financial ties. I had moments of intense sadness. Grief for the life I thought I had, for the person I thought my wife was. Those moments were increasingly overshadowed by a fierce resolve. I was a survivor. I had been betrayed, attacked, and robbed, but I was still here. I was healing. And I would not let this define me. I would not let her win. I started seeing a therapist, recommended by Miss Reed. Talking through the trauma, the betrayal, the anger was incredibly helpful. It wasn't just about my broken leg. It was about the psychological scars, the shattered trust, the feeling of being completely vulnerable. The therapist helped me understand that none of this was my fault. I had loved and trusted someone who was capable of extreme deception and violence. That was on her, not on me. The legal process dragged on for months. Sarah eventually pleaded guilty to some of the charges in exchange for a lighter sentence, likely advised by her lawyer, who saw the overwhelming evidence against her. She received a significant prison sentence. I didn't attend the sentence. I didn't want to see her, didn't want to hear her voice again. My focus was on my recovery, on rebuilding my life. I knew I might never fully understand her motives, or why she chose to inflict such pain on me. Maybe it was the money, maybe the other person, maybe a deep-seated resentment I never knew about. But ultimately it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was free. I eventually moved out of Clara's place and into a small apartment of my own. It felt strange to be starting over from scratch, but it also felt like a fresh start. My leg was still healing, but I was able to walk with a cane now, slowly but surely. I was even starting to think about returning to work part-time. One day, I was sitting on my new couch, a quiet evening, when I saw the cast iron pan in the corner of my living room. I had accidentally brought it with me when I was moving some of my kitchen stuff from storage. It was the exact same model, the same heavy black material. My heart pounded, and a wave of nausea washed over me. I quickly got up, grabbed the pan, and walked it outside to the dumpster. With a grunt of effort, I heaved it in. Clanged loudly against the bottom, a final, definitive sound. As I walked back inside, I felt a sense of closure. The physical pain would eventually fade. The emotional scars would take longer, but they too would heal. I had learned a brutal lesson about trust, about the hidden depths of people, even those closest to you. But I had also learned about my own resilience, my own strength. I had survived. I was broken, yes, but not beyond repair. And I was ready to face whatever came next, a little bit wiser, a lot more cautious, but ultimately still hopeful for a future that was truly mine. The journey was far from over, but at least now I was walking forward, one painful, determined step at a time.